Hey everybody, my name is Pierce Fraser. I am the creator of Hixon Draconis and the person who's kind of heading up the HSD miniature line. And I wanted to make a little video for you showing the unboxing of the figures that you'll be getting from our service if you chose to order them. So I just wanted to demo this. I'm sorry I don't have a tremendously great rig for doing this sort of thing. It's not something I do too often, but I'll show you the box. This is just a Shapeways box. What happens is when you order the product from Imagine 3D Minis, it gets assembled digitally via their system, and then they send it off to Shapeways, who prints it out on their really nice little miniature printer. So you're going to see a few cuts in this video, just because I'm going to have to put the camera down in order to open things up. But I will show you piece by piece what you get from any one of these boxes when you order. So let's check it out. Alrighty, so I've opened it up now, just cut it up. Anybody who's ordered from Shapeways before has probably seen a box kind of like this in the past. They package their products really well, so things are nice and protected when they come to you regardless of your location. You got a lot of bubble wrap to keep things safe. I ordered 3 minis, so that's what I'm expecting in this box. I don't know if they'll be individually packaged or not. We'll find out. Looks like they are all here. Yep, in individual bubble wrap, so awesome. We'll pull them out. There's number 1, number 2, and number 3 here in the back. Right, the rest of the box is just bubble wrap to keep it nice and safe, and the receipt. So we'll chuck that out of there. Open these 3 up. Okay, so here's figure number 1. This is a feline figure, has a sword and a handgun, pulled directly out of the packaging with no touch-ups going on. So if you've never ordered from 3D Miniatures before, or a 3D miniature type before, there are a few things to look out for if you're used to injection plastic. Just things to note. One of them is instead of having things like sprue lines, you have these little overprints here and there. You can see them kind of spiking up on the tail. These are really easy to clean. It's the same way you clean with any sort of sprue line or mold from an injection molded plastic thing. You just go over it with an X-Acto and cut those off. One of the things that I like to do with injection mold plastic models is drag the edge of the blade down some of those lines in order to, this is a really bad knife for this sort of thing, but just to show you the motion, I would drag across like this. I don't typically want to do that with a 3D printed model. I haven't tested it a whole lot to see what it'll do, but in general, the nature of these particular kind of points of overprinting is such that you can cut them straight on with the blade, and you'll get a nice clean cut out of there without dragging across it. You can also see barely, there's a little bit on the reflection right there by the foot, or by the leg. You can barely see stepping that comes from the 3D printer. So if you haven't worked with these before, what they do is they print the model from whatever orientation it is when it starts, and it goes up in layers. So this gal was probably printed, so I can barely tell. The stepping is so small these days. These have gotten so much better. But it comes up kind of like a bunch of sandwiches, a bunch of different layers, one on top of the other. And it used to be in an older 3D printed model, like say this one. This was one that was put together a long time ago on a printer that is not nearly as precise as the ones that the current HST miniatures are printed with. You'd see this stepping more prominently, and if I were to paint over this model, I would actually see these lines show up pretty dramatically. But with our modern ones here, one coat of primer, good miniature primer, will make these disappear. And it works really well. I can show you a painted one right here. Right. And one coat of primer just makes those things vanish. So there we go, that's the first one. The other part that I wanted to show you about this model is this sword here is really, really thin. You look at my thumbnail next to it, or something else. Here is the edge of an X-Acto blade, right? A box cutter, barely smaller than the actual sword there. And yet this mini managed to arrive at my home intact from wherever it was shipped from. So the boxing that they use is safe. It's good and protected, and your mini should arrive to you in one piece. That said, this magic is not impervious to harm. This plastic, this plastic is not impervious to harm, so do be careful with it once you get it out of the packaging, right? Because if this sword breaks because I'm clumsy with it, that's not their problem at that point. However, if the model does arrive at your house in pieces, call up Shapeways and let them know. Or you don't have to call them, you can send them an email. They're great at replacing damaged products if they don't show up in the way they're intended. Let's check out mini number 2. All right, mini number 2 is a seal. I was really excited about ordering this one because I just kind of wanted to see how she turned out, because I hadn't seen the seals printed before. The tail's really cute. This turned out neat. Again, some overprinting little sprues there that need to be clipped. Easy cleanups to do. You expect that from pretty much any miniature that you're going to get. Same arm pose as the last one, only this one isn't carrying a sword. I am excited that some of the options in the new Kickstarter will be increasing the number of arms we have available, and then I think after this one is finished, my hope is to have one dedicated entirely to things like new arms and getting all sorts of new pose options in there with the stuff we already have. We have to sort of build the collection of bodies first before we can really focus on having a variety of options within those bodies. So this miniature, this Kickstarter that we're working on right now will increase the number of bodies, and then we can increase the number of options within the bodies and grow as time goes on. Something you'll see with these models, if you look down here at the bottom, I got a couple of emails about this. You see how that base is pretty small? Let me give you something to compare it to. Here, we'll bring this other miniature back. There is a standard sort of, we'll call it Games Workshop standard of a round base versus the base that comes with this. Right? This was actually done intentionally, and it's to save you money. You'll note that the base that's on this model is made out of the same plastic as the model itself. Well, this isn't cheap plastic. This is high detail 3D printing plastic. It's expensive. It's why the models cost as much as they do, that and the machine that's used to create them. So if I print out a base that is that tall, that thick, even if it's hollowed like this one is, see how that's been concaved, but it's thick enough to actually serve as a base, is wider than the actual model itself, and has almost as much mass as it does, you're talking about buying that much more plastic in this high detail plastic, right? It's not the same as buying one of those bases for, I don't know, 20 cents or something if you want to get a package of 10 of them on eBay or something like that. This isn't junk plastic. It's the same high detail 3D. They can't hybridize it. They can't print it in one and then swap over to the other one. Actually, I believe there are printers that can do that. It's just not the way that these are set up. That's not an option we can provide. So we would either have to print it separate, which is still going to be more expensive for you, or we'd have to print that base out of this model plastic, which is pretty much the equivalent price of a whole other model of the same thing. So you're talking about an increase of, $10 to $15 to get that base. I would suggest buying a package of 20 of these on eBay for $6 and calling it good, as opposed to having us print these big old bases out of this, because that's just going to cost you more money. And we don't want to do that. We want to try to keep it affordable for you. We'll check out the back side of both of these. Cool. And then the last one. Bit of a bigger sculpt on this one because this guy's running. He's got a larger sword, big tail on him, thicker torso, thicker legs. If I put it down next to the others, you can see that the scale is still right with the other characters. He's going to get that one in the back of the head. But we've got a bigger footprint going on. This is a nice dynamic pose. I like this one. Right. We have some bending going on in the sword. That should look familiar to a lot of people who have purchased kind of miniatures via online services before. Heat will do that. Pressure will do that. If I bend it back, sorry, I'll try to do this with one hand. Yeah, not too successful. I can bend it a little bit, but it's just going to snap back to its previous position. But heat will fix this. You can put a hot rag on it. You can dip it into boiling water. Those of you who've worked with resin before might be a little concerned about the boiling water technique because it does heat it in a non-consistent way, right? It gets the outside hot before the inside gets hot. I've heard of hot rice being used to avoid that sort of thing, but honestly, with something this small, a couple seconds in boiling water will get you that sort of flexibility to fix this sort of thing. And once it dries, it will be straight again, assuming you straight it out. So again, easy fix. And what you've seen here is pretty much the collection of problems, quote unquote, you might experience with these miniatures. You're going to have a little bit of cleanup to do because of the overprinting that's done here, so a minute or two with a razor blade to fix that up. And if you have some long swords, this one didn't do it. This one was fine. but this thicker one over here bent a little bit. You might need to get a little bit of boiling water and a couple of seconds in order to soften that plastic up so that you can bend it back into position. But other than that, that's it. They come out beautiful. And as mentioned before, they paint up lovely. I've got a painted one right over here. Got another painted one right over here. This is the Tarek model that was featured for the first Kickstarter, and we will have many more TARs available if this next Kickstarter goes well. So there you go. I hope you can buy with confidence. There's lots of options available, and assuming this next Kickstarter takes off without a hitch, we'll have even more. See you then.